Hi everybody, this video is about 9 elements you need for a brand design. So branding and personal branding is a really complicated subject, and I'm going to talk about a very small piece of it today. I'm going to talk about 9 design elements that you need to build a personal brand. Brand design is a lot more than a logo. Logos are really important. Everybody has a logo. My plumber has a logo. Logos are only a very small piece of it. There are 10 zillion logos in the world. So if you design a logo, that's great, but you've got a lot more work to do. The brand design elements I'm going to talk about today are part of a brand ecosystem. So your brand ecosystem, your brand, the visual aspect of your brand is going to show up in a lot of places, and I call these places brand touchpoints. They're places like your website or email or print or broadcast, e-commerce, social media, video, digital marketing. There are a million places where your brand is going to show up, and you want to make sure that your brand shows up in a very consistent way across all of these brand touchpoints. So now let's dive into it. What are the 9 elements of a brand design ecosystem? First of all, we have the logo. So you want to have a logo. It should be simple. It should probably have 1 or 2 colors in it. Very few logos have more than 3 colors, so keep it simple. Number 2, fonts. You want to choose a font or 2 fonts for your brand. Generally, a main font. This could be the font that actually appears in your brand identity or logo, and a secondary font. Fonts have personalities, so there are serif fonts and sans serif fonts. There are personality fonts or handwritten fonts. The font says a lot about your brand, so be very thoughtful and very careful when you choose the fonts that are going to be associated in a very consistent way with your brand. Number 3, color palette. Color has an incredible psychological power. Colors mean things. So you want to develop a color palette for your brand. Lots of brand color palettes have maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 colors in them. So you want to develop a brand color palette that speaks a lot about the psychology and the strategy behind what it is that you do and what it is that you offer. And color is going to speak to your consumer, to your customer avatar. So you don't want to think about just the color that you personally like, but what is the color that your customer is going to respond to? What are they going to like? Think about it in terms of your end consumer. Number 4 is pattern and texture. A lot of people forget about pattern and texture, but this is a key design element that can be leveraged to be able to recognize you and your brand when people come across you, like the Louis Vuitton pattern that happens on all of their bags, or the brushed metal that Apple uses. These are very recognizable textures and patterns that they use consistently to great effect to help people recognize their brands. Number 5 is photography and animation. There are a million photography styles out there, and choosing one style and using it consistently across all of your brand touchpoints can really help solidify how your brand is recognized when people come across it in your brand ecosystem and across all of your brand touchpoints. So think about developing or choosing a photography style. Number 6, illustration and iconography. Just like photography, there are a million illustration styles out there and iconography styles out there. By choosing one that goes along with your brand and sings with your logo and your visual elements, your color palette, etc., and using that really consistently, it can be a way to establish a vocabulary for your brand that becomes really recognizable. Number 7, this is one that very few people kind of think about a lot of the time, but sound is a way that you can brand yourself. Think about Intel and their Intel Inside sound. It goes bum, 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 and whenever you hear that, you think Intel Inside. Intel uses sound as a branding element. Number 8 is layout. Using a particular type of layout or style of layout consistently across all of your brand touchpoints is another great way to establish a strong brand vocabulary that people are going to be able to recognize. Number 9, another one that people kind of don't think about a lot is tone of voice. So in the copy on your website or in the copy of your tweets or in the copy of your writing, what is your brand voice? What does your brand sound like? What kind? Is it formal? Is it jokey? Is it informal? Is it funny? Is it serious? What is the voice of your brand? Think about the tone of voice of your brand. And this is a bonus, personal style. I did a separate video on personal style branding, which you can check out. But personal style is a way that if you use a style element consistently on your person, hairstyle, glasses, a hat, the way you dress, hair color, you can use, if done consistently, personal style to establish a really strong brand element. And once you have all these elements together, what you want to do is pull them together in one place. You want to see how they work and look and feel together. The other really important aspect of developing a brand guidelines document is that whenever you work with a service provider, whether that's a website developer or a podcast editor or someone who's writing for you for your blog, you want to be able to give them your brand guidelines because that's going to show them exactly what your brand looks and feels like. So they're not going to develop some sort of creative work for you that's kind of really off base and doesn't look and feel like your brand and doesn't sit with all of your other brand touchpoint stuff. So once you have developed all these brand elements, you want to pull them all together into a brand guidelines. It can be a single page. Some large corporations' brand guidelines are 150 pages long, but you can keep it simple. Here's a one-page template of brand guidelines. There's a place for your logo, for a color palette, for fonts, icons, pattern and texture, illustrations, layout design, motion graphics, tone of voice, and photography. It puts them all on one page so you can see them all on one page to make sure that they look and feel great together. And just to show you a couple examples of how this comes to life, Chris Ducker, who runs an entrepreneurial community that I'm a member of, really great guy and a friend of mine, his branding is incredibly consistent. He uses consistent font, really consistent color palette of orange and gray, consistent photography style, and he uses it across all of his brand touchpoints incredibly consistently. So when you come across Chris Ducker's brand, you immediately know that it's Chris Ducker. Another example is a friend of mine named Jason Resnick. Jason has a freelancer business called Your Partner in Code is his tagline. And his website, he's changed it recently, but his website is incredibly consistent, has a very clear layout style, clear font style, clear color palette, and he uses it super consistently across all of his brand touch points. And so there's a look and feel to Jason's brand, which is immediately recognizable when you come across it. Another example I want to show you is Seth Godin. Seth Godin is an amazing marketing guru, and his website is incredibly consistent and very kind of bright and quirky, kind of like Seth is. He uses a personal branding style element of these bright yellow glasses, and he has a very specific kind of layout style and illustration style and color palette that he uses across his brand that makes him incredibly recognizable. So when you think about these 9 elements of brand design, go back and look. Ask yourself these questions. Do you have all of these 9 elements of a brand design? Does your brand design really look like an ecosystem? Do they all really work well together? Do you have all the elements? Are there any of the elements that are missing or the ones that you haven't really designed yet? Are any of them inconsistent with each other? Do they not look good when they're next to each other? Overall, what does your brand communicate? Does it communicate what you are personally about or what your business is about? And even more importantly, does it communicate along the lines of what your customer is expecting from you or the type of customer that you have, what they want from you? Is the aesthetic of your brand elevated? Is it great? Does it look cheap and boring? Is it generic? Is it anonymous? Really kind of back up and take a overarching look at your brand and evaluate what it's doing for you. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video on 9 elements of a great brand design. And if you did, please hit subscribe below so you can see my videos when they come out, and visit me at philipvandusen.com/muse and subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out every 2 weeks, and I share resources and insights and inspiration for graphic designers and entrepreneurs. And with that, thanks again for watching. Bye for now.